everyone, welcome to the 5 Beer Plan. I'm Brian, and this is the ongoing saga of an everyman's ale trail. In this episode, I'll examine a final New Zealand hop variety, re-up with Zach from Chapman's Brewing, and review Everyday Fog Motueka from Abomination Brewing. In this segment of Looking for Lupulin, I'm going to size up one more tropical hop variety from down under. Motueka is a premier New Zealand hop and named after one of the major hop growing regions therein. This hop was developed and released by the Institute for Plant and Food Research. It was bred from Saas and an unnamed New Zealand breeding strain. Initially known during breeding as 87.14-20, this hop took on the nickname Belgian Saas or B-Saas, in large part due to a Belgian brewery who took a liking to it during early test phases. Eventually, its name changed to Motueka. Motueka is known as a triploid hop. So what's a triploid, you might ask? The easy answer is that it's all relative. Okay, or genetic as the case may be. Wild hop varieties are diploid, meaning they have two sets of chromosomes. Just like us, one set is inherited from the mother and one set from the father. Though I don't fully understand the science behind it, a few commercial cultivars, such as Motueka, have three sets of chromosomes. Even mohops! Motueka is sometimes referred to as a noble-esque hop because of its lineage, and it also shares the top spot with Nelson Sauvin as the most grown hop in New Zealand. I have to remind myself that no disease resistance is bred into New Zealand hops in general because there are no hop diseases that threaten the hop crops there. My go-to reference book, Julian Healy's The Hops List, notes that Motueka has an alpha acid content of 6.5 to 8.5% and a beta acid content of 5 to 5.5%. With such a low alpha acid percentage, it imparts a mild citrus bitterness. Thus, it would be primarily used as an aroma hop. According to Yakima Valley Hops, Motueka has a very unique flavor and aroma that is reminiscent of fresh tropical limes. Like many other New World hop varieties, Motueka retains between 60 to 70% of its alpha acid after 6 months of storage. Styles where Motueka hops are found is quite varied. Saison, wit beer, European ale, English ale, dark lager, pilsner, Belgian ales, lager, Maibach, and ales. It makes a perfect single hop beer as well. And honestly, I can't wait to crack one open later in the episode. If you're homebrewing and can't find this hop, you could use Czech Saaz, US Saaz, or Sterling as substitutes. Unfortunately, this is another proprietary hop variety, so it is not available for your backyard garden. In this segment of Homebrew Hijinks, it's time for fermentation. The fermentation schedule for this beer was going to total about 2 weeks as previous brew sessions. One of the things I forgot to mention last episode is that the yeast I used was a liquid White Labs WLP002 English ale yeast. Since it was made for a 5-gallon pitch, I only used half of the packet. Within about 12 hours, I started to see some activity. Once the yeast was working, I transferred the fermenter to the basement. It needed to ferment at 68 to 70 degrees. At 72 hours after the yeast was pitched, the first dry hop commenced with a combination of HBC 586, Strata, and Citra totaling 22 grams. I opened the fermenter and dropped in the hop pellets. Then, 24 hours prior to the end of fermentation, the second dry hop commenced with a 49-gram total combination of those three hops. When I opened the fermenter this time, those tropical aromas just oozed out. Now I'm getting excited. Next time, I'll bottle and taste it. Now it's time for Barstool Banter. Listen in for the first half of my interview with Zach White and Scott Ferguson from Chapman's Brewing in Fort Wayne, Indiana. There are some pretty exciting things ahead for Chapman's very soon. So welcome to Barstool Banter. It feels like deja vu all over again. For those that aren't aware, Chapman's Brewing was featured during a season one interview. It is one of the regional breweries that I love to frequent, and after watching a Facebook Live video earlier this year, it made sense to circle back around and do it again. So, Zach, it's great to talk to you again. Can you please remind my listeners what your role is at Chapman's and how it may have changed since last time we talked?
Yeah, for sure. So it's great to be here again. So I'm now the chief operating officer at Chapman's Brewing. So I've been here for 7 years, something like that. Slowly amassed more power, right?
That's right.
And yeah, here we are.
Awesome. And I see you brought someone else with you this time. So, Scott, why don't you tell me a little bit about your role at Chapman's?
Cool. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I know that kind of thing. No, so I'm Scott Ferguson. So I founded Chapman's back in 2012, and I've been since then and now the chief executive officer.
So here in your 12th year, you have some pretty big news that you want to share. So can you share what's going on there in Broadway in Fort Wayne, Indiana?
Go ahead and start out. Yeah.
Yeah. So expanding again, we're looking at the second largest, market in Indiana at Fort Wayne. So Fort Wayne has the Electric Works project. All in all, it's a $600-700 million project. It's the old GE building here in downtown Fort Wayne. I don't know the total square foot of the whole place, but it's massive.
Yeah, a little over 1 million feet.
Yeah, 1 million square feet of real estate. So this is where General Electric used to be. They had 27 different buildings all doing different things, that kind of stuff. So a few years ago, the city put up a bunch of money with a bunch of funding. We moved our headquarters here. So finally, after, about 3 years worth of planning and purchasing and waiting, we're officially here, ready to set our opening day for, March 5th. So yeah, this is going to be pretty huge for us. We haven't ever had a tap room this large before. It's got 20 taps. It's got a 10-barrel brew house, 7 fermenters, 7 bright tanks. Just an absolutely incredible space with the brewery right dead center of it. I mean, you can't not see it when you walk in. It's great.
Perfect. The only thing I'd add to that is that we look even a little bit more philosophical about the Electric Works development as a whole. This has been an R&D space for Fort Wayne and for General Electric for over 120 years. The building that we're in was built in 1907. And they were doing motor development, and we've got, one of the gifts that we got from the management team here when we took occupancy is original patent drawings of patents that were created right here. And so really, when I was working with the developers of the campus, Ancora, and then the ownership group, RTM, they're saying, Scott, we don't want a mall. We're not interested in some just big retail place. We're not interested in just having shopping. We want stuff that honors the spirit of what happened in this part of the world, in this city, for over a century. And so manufacturing is core to Fort Wayne's identity. I mean, we think about all the monstrous manufacturers we've had, some still here, some have left, that kind of thing. And so by bringing the manufacturing in, we could have built just a tap room, but really we built 2 things. We built a 260-seat restaurant and we built a 10-barrel brewery. So for us, this is a big deal, right, to bring both of these together. And we're just excited because of what it brings to the campus and to the neighborhood. I've been spending a lot of time going to the different neighborhood associations and meeting with them and seeing how this part of the city is just really vibrant and taking off.
Just kind of interesting driving by it. I've lived in Fort Wayne for years now. I moved here when I was in, I think, 2nd grade. Driving by like this area of town, it's always like they need to do something with it. It just was a desolate old building with broken windows everywhere. But I mean, now you walk in and look at it, you couldn't tell that it was empty for 60 years.
That's right. That's right.
So it really is something cool. But no, we're extremely excited to be here, and it's a dream come true here.
Yeah,
sure.
Largest commercial development in the city's history. I mean, you start thinking like that in the city of Fort Wayne, right? 2nd largest market in the state. Just incredible.
Well, and kudos to the city of Fort Wayne for being forward thinking and saying, hey, we've got this infrastructure here. We've got these 100-year-old buildings that are going to stand up to, they've stood for 100 years. They're going to stand for probably another 100 years, right? So why not leverage these and use them? Yeah.
The buildings are built like a bomb shelter. Yeah. I mean, you've got
reinforced bomb shelters. Yeah, they actually are places of refuge. If there's you just come and get in any side of the building.
You've got reinforced concrete steel walls everywhere. So if they didn't want to build something here, tearing it down would have probably cost an arm and a leg too. Yeah. I mean, it's just so much.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and if that was truly a bomb shelter or still is a bomb shelter, I mean, what better place to be holed up than a brewery?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Let's wait for the apocalypse. Pass me another beer.
Yeah, we got it. You got it.
What kind of challenges did you face with a 120-year-old building?
Yeah, the challenge that we really had is that there are certain walls and pillars you do not move. I mean, these are I-beams built the old-fashioned way where they're actually constructed of different pieces folded together. But I would have to say the biggest challenge has also been one of the best things about the development, and that is the National Park Service, and this is being designated as a National Historic Landmark.
Oh, nice.
Whole campus is on the National Register of Historic Places. And the developers here were so smart and forward thinking and saying, look, we're going to apply for literally millions of dollars of grants to bring this back to what it looked like then. And so the challenge is totally awesome. But the challenge for us was, boy, you can't just put whatever you want wherever you want it. Yeah. It has to be something you say, well, what were it's kind of like, what was the constitutional framers' intent when they wrote this amendment? It's more like this roof line, what would it have looked like in 1907?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And you're like, I think in 1907, they would have done whatever the hell they wanted and just put it where they had it. But yet now, for instance, just putting the chiller that we have on the roof, all the stacks coming out of the brew house, they had to be set back. If you pull up the ceiling in our brew house and look, you see, why in the world did you make the chimney go at these crazy angles? It's like, well, because you can't see it from the road, because you couldn't see anything from the road for the last 100 years. And so that has been by far a blessing and a challenge.
Yeah, that was actually kind of funny. I mean, I remember chatting with you about that. I was like, well, what are we waiting on with the exhaust vent coming from the brew house, right? I was like, why are we still messing with this exhaust vent?
You have no idea. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's you literally are not allowed to have it be seen from the road was the reason. So we had to work around that. So
like signage and things, just all of this stuff to be like even for our outdoor patio and realizing whatever we do, it has to be movable. None of it can be permanent because none of that was here 100 years ago.
Down to, believe it or not, like a keypad on the outside of the doors.
Yeah, can't do it.
Or something like that. Yeah. Just lots of little red tape everywhere.
On the other hand, one of the things when we were building out the space, we had, the architects were like, hey, we're going to paint that ceiling. You got all these beams and floor joists and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to paint it. They're like, you don't? I'm like, man, that's character. That's 100 years of stuff going on in the space, the different colors, the textures, the sizes. Man, leave it. And it's one of the biggest compliments we get when they come in there, like, man, look at the ceiling, so interesting, that kind of stuff. And so all over the place, it's like, man, homage to the past. You got to admit, big industrial buildings and breweries are just kind of hand in glove, just kind of works.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I really like about the craft industry is that breweries aren't afraid to embrace that history, embrace something that might be slightly run down and fix it up and make it their own. So, again, kudos to you guys for embracing that and looking ahead and say, yeah, we're going to build here. We're going to open something up here.
I think it's St. Joseph down in Indianapolis that's built in an old church, right? Yeah. I mean, there's just some really cool stuff out there that you would have no idea there's a brewery inside. And you walk in and there it is. I mean, they use the pulpit. That's where the brew house is. It's incredible.
I think you've hit on a thing what you said earlier about, where breweries go and how they're not afraid to do that. I think at the end of the day, it's authenticity. One of the local papers was asking, hey, what do you think about some of the things we're hearing about breweries shutting down and stuff like that? And where do you think the challenges are? And I think, well, any industry's got ups and downs. I mean, you look at it, but you can look at craft beer and say it's overwhelmingly positive. I said, I think the biggest challenge that craft faces is these very large companies making a simple alcoholic beverage and then flavoring it with whatever they can find, wherever the popular trend is, because there's no originality there. There's no authenticity there. And that's just made based on whatever marketing tells them to make next. And we just really think by being here, being part of the city, you're doing something that a large company that says, well, I got branches in 20 different cities, they don't even understand it. They're like, well, put it out by the highway, build new construction, make it nice and modern and airy and all that great stuff. Yet we're like, no, we're going to come to the center of town. Fort Wayne is everybody in this city is not 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, like 2 degrees of knowing somebody that worked for General Electric. It's impossible to go to, oh yeah, my aunt worked there. Oh, my brother worked there. My cousin worked there. It's amazing.
That's really cool. I like that. I assume then with getting some of the original patent drawings, some of the other probable paraphernalia that you found there during the excavations, the renovations,
You're going to use some of that as far as your decoration and enhancing that
Yeah,
space then?
so we've got a massive wall behind me here. You can't really see it, but behind me, there's a massive wall that's it's just shelving and shelving and shelving. There is that big green building over there that's full of just
Oh my
stuff they
gosh,
found.
it's 60,000 feet.
So,
Yeah.
and it's just absolutely full of just old parts and drawings and just pieces and old boilers and old everything. So, yeah, we'll have an entire wall of just cool stuff that they found when they were excavating, for lack of a better term, right?
Yeah.
One of
yeah.
the great things that the folks on the architecture side, as well as the contractors, as they're doing all this stuff, they kept finding this crazy things, like this monstrous thing with all these wires and belts and gears sticking out of it. And they're like, what do we do with this thing? And it's somebody like, well, I mean, just, throw it in the pile with all the other stuff. But they said, no, let's like make it so it doesn't kill somebody if they touch it. But, let's put it on the campus. And as you walk around here, you'll see these really odd looking big machines. And they're like, yeah, we found this, right? And so we've been working with the archivist for General Electric. And so along what Zach said, along that back wall, we'll have all kinds of cool stuff from over 100 years ago, all the way up into the 80s, where General Electric was still maintaining a presence. One of my best friends, his mom put together World War II artillery shells in this building, in our building. And so you think about finding that. I mean, it's the history of Fort Wayne, let alone General Electric.
That's really cool.
One of the great things about a team like this is that normally, in a smaller business, you have one guy kind of saying, hell or high water, here's where we're going, here's how we're doing it. And really, for me, I truly enjoy being in that front of house position, talking to people. Zach and I are the two primary owners. We definitely have a great base of investors that have supported us. So I deal with that and think about some of the things like, what do we want to be when we grow up? That's hard to take that hat off and then I got to make sure the trains leave on time. So by having, my trust in Zach and everything that's developed over the years has really culminated in him being able to say, look, here's how we're going to actually get this done, based on Scott saying, wouldn't it be great if we could do this? And so it's really developed that way. And I think a third thing to say is there's another mystery person here that you don't see, and that's our brewers. Because really, when you combine the three together, you have to say, okay, here's where we want to take the company. Here's how we're going to get there. And then the star of the whole show is the beer itself.
Yeah, exactly. Scott, by far, is the brains of the operation. He's got these crazy ideas, and I figure out how we're
actually make them happen.
How to make it happen.
That's awesome. No, I think that's one of the things that will make a business brewery successful, is having a good team of people around you. And it sounds to me like you've done just that. You've got a solid group of people you trust that have a skill set that you really need, and it just makes the whole thing work properly.
Thank you for saying that. I mean, that means a lot. And it's not been something that we understood from the beginning. Like I've said, it's like every possible mistake you can make in this business I've made. And I think we've invented new mistakes that other people didn't know you could make. And so we can add those to the list. But I will say this, you cannot do this by yourself. Someone who says, oh, I'm going to be the brewer, I'm going to guide it, it's the me brand. Oh, you're fooling yourself, man. You got to have a team.
And I think in this environment too that we're currently in, where we're seeing, I mean, let's face it, every week we're seeing breweries close, we're seeing restaurants close. The service industry is really taking it on the chin at the moment. And I think just that if you think you're going to be able to do it on your own, you're going to fail, because you can't wear that many hats. You can't spread yourself that thin without going crazy.
And that's the other thing too, is that there's a bit of a mental burden on each role that makes doing the other role hard, right? So if you're sitting there thinking, if every day, you're thinking, how am I going to execute on this? Then you say, I just need to get everything figured out. I don't want to do anything new because we got to get this right. But yet, that if you're going to grow your business, you got to innovate, you got to continually push it and go there. At the same time, if you're a brewer and you're the creative force behind the beers that you make, and then 5 minutes earlier, you've been thinking about how you're going to make payroll, it does not work well with that creative process. And so, our brewers and Zach and I, we work together on it, but ultimately our brewers are like, well, here's how I want to bring that beer to life. And I think it goes to say, we really tried to enable our brewers to purely focus on that. Tell us what you need. Zach's always like, what do you need? What can I get? How can I get it to you? If we want to do something this month, what do you think it should be? And that's been really great. because we're letting our guys operate in their strengths.
So I think we take like a kind of like a three-pronged approach, basically. So, I look at sales data and look at the market's doing, and you and I, we go a lot of places and travel a little here and there and like to look at different trends and that kind of stuff. So I look at stuff from purely, here's what I think the market wants. And, Casey will say, well, here's what I want to brew. And that's kind of the way it goes, right?
And that's been an interesting thing here too in this business. We know that if we head to the coasts, we're going to see a fundamentally greater hop character in many of the things that are brewed. We start getting into the sours. We start getting into a lot of different styles that find some of their home and some of their real inspiration on there. Here in the Midwest, we have a really strong German heritage. I mean, that most of the breweries around here were started by German immigrants that came in. The reason why we don't have Irish distilleries everywhere is the Germans had money and the Irish didn't. And so the Germans came in and says, okay, we're going to set this up. And so we see that through today, that in the Midwest, as general rule, you'll see a greater malt character. You're going to see, those kinds of styles that maybe the ABV is a bit lower than what we can see out on the coast there. And we just think that Zach's a master at understanding, what the trends are in the industry. And we watch California just like everybody else does. We watch New England. We watch Asheville. We watch all these places, and some of it we say that can stay there, right? That's fine if they like it. But other things like, man, we need to move there, right? We need to do something that's reflective of those new trends.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that's another thing that I like about the model that you have as far as your brewing goes. I mean, you have your core beers clearly, but you also have what I love are the roulette series, which lets your brewers go creative and just go crazy on some sort of crazy barrel edge style or some sort of style that's very obscure. And people dig that because it's out of the norm. It's not something you can get anywhere else. It's small batch. And I think that makes sense to do things like that.
So the really cool thing about this new space that we've got is we've got an even smaller system than we have up at the main location. So Angola is a 20-barrel brew house. And the way that the brights are all set up, we really can't do anything less than 20 barrels, right? Which after everything's said and done, it'll yield 35 to 38 half barrels out of that batch, right? So when we try to be as creative as possible, we have to really think, do we think this is going to move and do we think this is going to sell? I mean, if I could drink ESBs all day, I'd love it. But
I'm with you.
That's not going to move in a tap room or out on the shelves in a, S&V or whatever, right? The awesome thing here is we've got 10-barrel brew house and we can make as small as 5-barrel batches. So if the guys come in one day and say, I want to make a banana kumquat porter or something, whatever.
Quince is a good thing.
We can now do that. So it's going to be able to open us up to a whole new world of possibilities. Just stuff that we can try that we really haven't been able to in the past. Absolutely. Our roulette series is just, chock full of just weird, crazy one-off things, right? But a lot of those we know that we've made before and we know those are going to work and we know people like them. So like our German Fest beer goes over great every year, or Ben's Jammin', Blood in the Water, that kind of stuff. Yeah. But with the Brewers series, which is the new one we're launching here, which is going to be all beers we make out of this location, Electric Works, is going to be just off the wall, crazy, weird stuff that we've been wanting to make for a long time, but we just haven't really gotten around to it.
I really couldn't agree more, Zach. And I think that from where we sit, it's being able to flex so that by having the brew house there, I think what happens is that when the stakes just go up, the bigger the batch size, where you're worried because, again, while we want to try all kinds of new things and our customers are not guinea pigs. We have prided ourselves in being such an easy choice for people to make when they see our beer on tap because they know that these guys have thought about it and they've tried to really put the right stuff into it. So by being able to make a 10-barrel batch, yes, but with 7 fermenters and 7 brights, and we can carbonate in all 14 vessels, we can put out beer when we need to. So it's great for us. We always struggle, like Zach said, we always struggle that with such a large system as the primary one, it was hard to make these small batches and other than a safer choice. So when we make these things, if they're not any good, we're going to dump it. But we think that our brewers got so many great ideas, things that we're ready. We can't wait to try.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So that's not something I thought about before because originally, I'll be very honest with the both of you. When I first started going to Chapman's, I was like, okay, well, they're the same 5 or 6 beers on tap all the time. But it makes sense as what you're saying, because you have such a large brew house there in Angola. You really have to focus on those core beers and make sure that that's what you're putting out and that's what people expect.
Kind of what it comes to is like being able to pivot a little bit. So the system, the setup we have up in Angola is we always run into the same problem, which is a bottleneck at our bright tank. And so we really can't fit a whole lot more in that brew house. And the bright tanks that we would need to be able to fit in a 10-barrel batch, I mean, we need a pretty good sized bright to buy another one, right? So we run into an issue where a lot of beers just bottleneck at that bright, and then it just takes forever to get anything through because you can't carb more than one thing at a time.
Right.
And it takes an entire day to carb something and an entire day to clean it, and then you're on to the next one. I mean, we have 5 fermenters up there. So that brew house was really built to pump out a lot of the same, 4 or 5 beers. And trying to get one-offs in there in that brew schedule, it's like a fine art of trying to operate that thing. Whereas here, we've got a lot more opportunity. We've got 7 fermenters, 7 bright tanks, and all the fermenters can double as bright tanks. So when we were developing the layout of this brewery, we were like, okay, what's the main problem we have up in Angola? It's we bottleneck. Now, I don't think it's possible to bottleneck.
Well, I'd even add to it as well. I'm a huge fan of a Hefeweizen, love wheat beers, think they're fantastic, but they are a pain in the butt to make because when you're mashing in with a wheat beer, that gluten that we love in bread is right there. It's ever present, and it really can make the mash difficult. And so a lot of places that if you don't have a mash rake system, you can do your wheat beers, but you're going to get a clumped up mash where you're going to really have some of those things not express themselves the best way. So here at Electric Works, we have our own mash rake that'll allow us to fully utilize it to make mash beers, really, in our opinion, for the first time, for us to really go after that. So I'm really looking forward to that. We also have a hop back that allows us to really do those hop additions, but then get them out of there so we don't have any of that sediment. Makes for clearer beer, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
I could talk about tech all day. It's just good stuff.
Absolutely. So Zach, the last time we talked, I think you joked around that you can sell and you can drink beer, but you can't brew worth shit. Has that changed at all in the last 2 years since I've talked to you?
Yeah. I spent many a drunk night contemplating buying another mist. I think at this point, being in this industry for so long, I've tried so many good things that I don't want to try my own because I know it's not going to be as good as what the pros can do. It'll be a fun side project, like if I ever did, but no, it for sure has not changed. That stain is still on my ceiling of me trying the first time.
So the last time we talked, I hadn't brewed either. I actually started a year ago brewing, which has been kind of fun, just doing 1-gallon batches. So Scott, I assume you've brewed before.
Yes, absolutely. So actually, my dad I got started with just extract brewing back, I would say, in 2004, 2005. And it really started when we had taken a trip out to Sonoma, California, and then went south and found a number of really amazing breweries up and down there. Think about it. This is Pleistocene times, right? I mean, this is like ancient history, 04, right?
Yeah.
And seeing that, we said, how hard could this be? Now, my dad's got his doctorate in plant physiology and microbiology. And so he's like, this is a bioprocess. We can tackle this thing with solid, consistent measurement and science, stuff like that. And I said, yeah, but will it taste good? And so we started doing Scotch 70 shillings. We were doing a nut brown ale. We're doing, just copying, just copies of some of the more popular things. And it was really so fun. I mean, it was so fun to be able to do something that's an art and a science, right? Coming up with that great recipe and then figuring out how to make it the same way every time. But I will say this, really, the home brewers have it better than the commercial guys do every time. You can add and take things out of your mash and on the boil as you will. When you're dealing with 600 gallons of something, it's much, much more difficult to it. A lot of those great homebrew recipes, they don't scale linearly. And so you have some trouble with it. It's like, well, I just don't understand it. I'm making 5 times the batch. Why not 5 times the additions? And it doesn't. So really, it's kind of like cooking for your family versus cooking for 300. It's a different approach. And so while I really thoroughly enjoyed the homebrew thing, it does not transfer over to what it takes to brew commercially, at least in my opinion.
Sure. So when you started Chapman's, were you the primary brewer then?
Actually, my dad and I were doing the first initial batches. One of the first things we realized is that we should not be the primary brewers. This is something where wow, how are we going to brew? I mean, the minimum batch that we could do in Angola was 600 gallons at a time, where we've made no more than 5 gallons at a time. And so that kind of thing really, spooked us. And so we did a national search. And of course, we didn't have to go any further than Michigan. I mean, we all know, it's a tremendous beer culture almost everywhere you go up there. And so our first brewer came down from Michigan and opened my eyes, just like, here's how you really do this. And then what was so great, we brought in his assistant, a kid that went to high school 15 years later than I did. And then to realize just how much this is such a joy to see this still in this industry. It's an apprentice-based program. You go to Germany, you can become a brewmeister, that kind of stuff, beermeister. But here, it's really more of like getting into the business, starting with that mop and bucket and cleaning, and then learning to the point where you do that. So yeah, right at the beginning, but really, really quickly thereafter, we brought the professionals in that knew what they were doing.
Sure. That must have been a blast too, brewing with your father.
Oh yeah. So my dad and I just really would do a lot of things together. So he and I started the vineyard there in Noble County. So we do that. We don't make the wine, but we sell the grapes. And so my dad and I have always been able to, he will look at things from an intensely process focused way, but doesn't understand anything about the business, just was like, well, how do you make money with this? That kind of thing. Yeah. And so that's been great. I mean, I think about in my business background where things have really developed. And it's like when I first met Zach here 7 years ago, joining us in the company then, and then getting to know him, you realize, okay, everything that I've been involved with that I felt like, wow, it's really working the way that it does. You have to have that team, that partner that complements you where you're weak, right? And you can do the things you're great at, and they come in around and do all the other things that need to be done. And so that's where I find ourselves now. And that's, we couldn't have done what we have here without Zach and without the whole team, but especially, working with Zach and all the ops side.
That's awesome.
Last call.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. This episode, I'm drinking Everyday Fog Motueka from Abomination Brewing in North Haven, Connecticut. From the brewer, an everyday version of our Wandering into the Fog series, double dry hopped with Motueka. Without further delay, well, Everyday Fog is a 7.1% ABV NE IPA. So when I pour this, it's a nice deep golden haze. It has a really nice fine white foamy head on it that just seems to last here. It's got a very nice citrus aroma. Very appealing. Alright, so first sip impression. Okay, definitely a very citrusy forward IPA. It certainly has a lime kind of vibe on the palate. It's got a light to medium kind of mouthfeel on it. It's got a little bit of effervescence on the tongue. Not quite a pillowy type softness, but there is just a hint of that. And I guess it goes back to that whole idea of a medium-bodied mouthfeel. The citrus flavor, it's one note. I'm not getting much more than the lime profile that's described with Motueka. Not a bad thing. I think the thing I really like about this particular variant of the Everyday Fog series is that there is a simplicity that goes along with this. It's a what you see is what you get kind of beer, and it is a good solid beer. So I really appreciate everything that's gone into this. I rather like a good lime profile. I think it really helps to have this double dry hopped with Motueka because it really helps you see that it's a great dual use hop. But it also has a nice like exotic lime flavor on the palate as well. So that lime vibe just kind of stays on the palate, and then it almost fades into more of a slight citrus bitterness. It's not really hoppy. It's very mild, not very bitter at all. I was expecting maybe a little bit more citrus bitterness on the palate. I could really see this as being a great summertime beer. I know that 7%, right? So it's not something I would crush on, but it is something that I think would taste really nice as you're sitting on your back porch in the summer, sitting by the pool. I think it would really go well with any kind of a summertime activity. It's super smooth too. So sometimes these NE IPAs can get a little bit top heavy as far as the flavor profile goes. That citrus can kind of, I don't know, almost push you over the edge of really liking it. But this is, it's almost restrained. It's right on the edge of like saying, hey, I am an NE IPA and I am going to kick you in the teeth with a juicy citrus flavor. It doesn't quite do that. Again, I really appreciate the effort that breweries go into creating these single-hopped beer releases, because I really think for the above-average craft consumer, such as myself, I think we really want to be able to see what it really means to have a Motueka hop. What does that really mean to us as a consumer? So I really appreciate that about this particular beer. And of course, I appreciate that about more or less every beer that I've had on the show that are highlighting single hop varieties. So I would give this one a solid 4 tasters out of 5 on the Flightboard. Cheers, Abomination Brewing. If you've got a beer you'd like me to drink and describe, leave a comment below. If you're a brewer and have one in mind, direct message me on Instagram and let's see what we can do. Well, that's all for this episode of the 5 Beer Plan. With so many podcasts out there, thanks for choosing to listen to mine. Join me next time as I take another southern tour, continue my latest homebrew adventure, conclude my conversation with Scott and Zach from Chapman's Brewing, and review that latest homebrew. Remember to hit the subscribe button to be notified of new episodes. I'd love to hear from you, so please follow me on Instagram, 5beerplan 2022, and leave a comment to let me know what your favorite beer with Motueka is. Be sure to support your local breweries, choose your beers wisely, and drink them responsibly. Until next time, keep walking your ale trail, and stay thirsty, my friends.